The Mongol invasions of Japan are often reduced to stories of great typhoons breaking the Mongol fleet, of honorable samurai searching for jewels, or less honorable samurai sneaking around the island of Tsushima. But what tends to receive less attention in portrayals are the preparations and strategy employed by the Japanese government of the time, the Kamakura bakufu. In this part of our series on how to defend against the Mongols, we look at the top-level preparations of the shogunate to prepare their islands and maximize their strengths against the navies of Kublai Khan. This video was sponsored by our kind YouTube members and patrons. Becoming a YouTube member or patron is the best way to support our work, so we're now providing our supporters with exclusive videos to thank them. Join their ranks to watch the Pacific War series, alongside the First Punic War, Sulla's biography, the Italian War of Unification, Risorgimento, the Russo-Japanese War, Albigensian Crusade, History of Prussia, and much more. 80 or so exclusive videos in total. In 2024, YouTube members and patrons will watch series on the Fall of Sparta, the Reconquista, Second Punic War, Spanish War of Succession, and Russian Civil War, and will continue getting early access to all videos, access to an exclusive Discord server, will know our schedule, and vote on future videos. YouTube member and patron support allows us to keep the majority of our videos free in a world where YouTube monetization income is very uneven. If you want to support our work, join their ranks today via the link in the description and pinned comment. Thank you. The Kamakura bakufu had been preparing for a Mongol attack for several years before the first invasion in 1274. Diplomatic contacts between the Mongols and Japan had begun in 1266, and repeated envoys followed over the next few years. The rude, silent treatment of Mongol envoys would have been an offensive maneuver regardless of the Mongols' rather infamous opinion on the matter, and the potential consequence could not have been lost on the part of the Japanese. Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan's letters demanding Japanese cooperation and submission became increasingly harsh, which, coupled with contacts with southern China's Song dynasty, meant the Japanese must have been quite aware of the risk they faced on such a course of action. But, being an island nation, Japan must have felt reasonably secure at first. This began to change in 1268. That year, a new, more energetic and confrontational man became the Shiken, the de facto ruler of Japan and regent for the shogun, and in turn, regent for the emperor. This was the 18-year-old Hojo Tokimune, the man who steered Japan through both Mongol invasions. Never one to back down from a fight, Hojo Tokimune anticipated early on the potential threat Japan faced, and soon after his appointment began to send additional soldiers to patrol and prepare defenses on Kyushu, one of Japan's southern islands close to Korea. Not only its proximity to Korea, but its wide, accessible and protected beaches and bays made it an ideal landing site. The likeliest of these was Hakata Bay, the most direct harbour for ships approaching from Korea. Thus, the Kamakura bakufu centered defense preparations here, with scouts and patrols keeping watch over it and garrisons steadily being placed in proximity. The Hojo clan was right to expect an invasion via Korea. In 1268, the same year of Hojo Tokimune's ascension, Kublai Khan ordered the Koreans to begin the construction of a new fleet of 1,000 ships. Though the southern Song dynasty remained the primary target, the construction of the fleet in such proximity to Japan could not be kept hidden. Indeed, when a large revolt broke out in Korea the next year, which briefly deposed Korean King Wonjong, some Koreans made their way to Japan. They brought with them news of the revolt and requested Japanese assistance against the Mongols. None was forthcoming, and the Mongols crushed the revolt by 1271, reinstalling Wonjong and strengthening their hold over the peninsula. A Mongol army was now stationed in Korea to further secure it. But the words of the Koreans confirmed the suspicions of Hojo Tokimune. They must have brought with them words of the fleet construction and rumors of an attack on Japan. As Kublai Khan's envoys continued to come to Kamakura, there would have been little doubt of the threat now on the horizon. Hojo Tokimune's government had to put Japan on a war footing. Yet the curious nature of Japan's government at the time had to be navigated. While Japan was nominally ruled by the emperor was a powerless figure, reduced to figurehead by the shoguns of the Minamoto clan in the late 12th century. But at the very start of the 13th century, the death of the shogun left only young boys as heirs, prompting the creation of a regent position, the shiken, from the Hojo clan, who did not give this position up. Thus, the de facto ruler of Japan in the 1200s was the regent of the regent for the emperor. This caused some legal troubles for the bakufu, that is, the shogunate, as it could only raise troops who were gokenin, landholders who were vassals of the shogun. In the lead-up to the first Mongol invasion, Hojo Tokumune legally could not raise any great army from across Japan. By sending troops from Kamakura, who he had direct access to, Tokumune could only hope that other lords may follow his example, but he could not enforce it. Another issue plagued Kamakura's troops. Many of the gokenin, reliant on their landholding for income, had in the decades since the establishment of the bakufu, parceled out their lands in each generation. By the eve of the Mongol invasion, many of these lands had diminished so much that for gokenin in Kyushu, like Takazaki Suinaga, they were only able to raise 5 troops to accompany them, average for the gokenin of Kyushu, but more than what the common gokenin of Honshu, Japan's largest island, could muster. Many of the gokenin struggled to handle the costs of outfitting themselves and their mounts in the necessary arms and armor, let alone their retainers, and still yet cover the cost of traveling to Kyushu. To remedy this, in the years leading up to the first Mongol invasion, the Kamakura bakufu passed laws forbidding the transfer or sale of gokenin lands to non-relatives. Land already sold had to be returned for the original price, and in 1271, this was changed so that these lands had to be returned for free. By doing so, Hojo Tokumune hoped to improve the ability of the gokenin to meet the costs of the upcoming confrontation. At the same time, he consolidated positions of power around himself and his family, an effort to centralize command in the face of the many powerful lords across Japan whose egos could impede his strategy. In late 1274, the fleet of Kublai Khan's newly established Yuan dynasty set out from Korea to Japan. The islands of Tsushima and Iki were swiftly overrun within a few days. While the islanders put up a spirited defense, they were simply too few to delay the advance. A few refugees from the islands brought word to Honshu and the bakufu. Hojo Tokumune was ready. Upon learning of the Yuan's approach, he is recorded as stating, "Finally, this is the most momentous event of my life." When a priest asked how he planned to respond, Tokumune shrieked, "Ketsu! Victory!" Tokumune's preparations had been underway for years. Most of the defending troops along Hakata Bay were local gokenin raised in Kyushu, but additional troops from Honshu were sent in the final months before the attack. He had prepared well, and the Mongols landed precisely where he had anticipated. When the boots of Yuan troops disembarked on the soft sands of Hakata Bay on November 19, 1274, the shogunate's warriors were there to meet them. As the Yuan ships had neared the bay, word was sent to rally the garrisons, and even as the first clashes began, more gokenin and their retainers were rushing from across Kyushu to join them. The fighting that ensued was fierce. The Yuan had brought the larger force, many of its men of greater experience than that of the Japanese. Over the course of the day, the Yuan troops broke through several sections of the Japanese line and burned down neighboring towns. Still, the level of Japanese resistance and preparedness was greater than the Yuan had anticipated. The archery of the samurai was better than expected, as they picked off one of the top Yuan commanders and stole his horse. The Yuan realized this expected puny island was putting up greater defense than they had come prepared for, and that their overconfident force was not large enough to fight their way through the defenders of Kyushu, or possibly occupy all of Japan. A withdrawal was undertaken in good order. Eyewitness accounts, like that of the gokenin Takazaki Suinaga, indicate a carefully managed withdrawal on the part of the Yuan forces, returning to their ships and sailing back to Korea. While rough weather made the return journey more difficult, stories of great typhoons sinking the first Yuan fleet are later exaggerations not present in contemporary sources. For Hojo Tokumune, the divine support had not been in the form of waves, but through ensuring of the Japanese victory with their own means. But Hojo Tokumune was under no impression that he had broken Mongol power in any way, and knew another attack was forthcoming. Kublai Khan would want revenge as certainly as the sun would rise again over Japan, especially once the envoys Kublai sent in 1275 were executed by the Japanese. Hojo Tokumune did not sit on his laurels, but immediately began to prepare for the next invasion. He had seen what had worked well, and importantly, he also understood where his preparations had not been enough, and with the next assault likely to be much greater, he needed to double his efforts if he wanted to withstand it. To do this required more samurai to be in Kyushu, and this required greater control over samurai regardless of whether they were Gokinin or not. To aid in this, Tokumune replaced many of the Shugo, military governors of Japan's provinces, with Hojo clan loyalists and family members to carry out his orders. In an expansion of his powers, both Gokinin and non-Gokinin troops not normally under his jurisdiction, could now be levied for Japan's defense. The power of the Shugo was also increased locally in order to facilitate this, for many of the warriors now being called up for duty may have chafed at falling under bakufu control. Traditionally, the bakufu and Japanese governments had rewarded samurai for their valor in combat against the enemy with riches and lands taken from defeated factions. In a war in Japan, there were many lands to redistribute, but no such riches could be gained from a foreign foe who left little behind. Many of the Gokenin had not only put their livelihoods and lives at stake to travel across Japan to Kyushu, many would do so again traveling to Kamakura city for their reward. The rambunctious Takazaki Suinaga, for instance, sold his horse and saddle to pay for his journey to Kamakura from Kyushu. Though he succeeded in getting rewarded, the bakufu was reluctant to pay the expense for rewarding all these samurai, did not wish them to leave their posts in Kyushu, and did not want them to beggar themselves and sell all their horses and equipment before the Mongols returned. The bakufu thus forbade samurai to leave Kyushu, citing military necessity. Of the estimated 6,000 Japanese who fought in the first invasion, only 120 received rewards, mostly those of the higher class. While useful at the moment, in decades to come this had severe consequences for the bakufu, as many samurai found themselves impoverished by paying all of their own expenses for the campaign. Tokumune prepared in other ways. Further divine help was sought, as shrines and temples across the islands were ordered to pray for Japan's victory. To better defend Hakata Bay and prevent the breakouts of the first invasion, the order was given to expand the seawall. It appears a minimal set of fortifications had existed at certain points around Hakata Bay, remnants from fears of Chinese invasions in centuries past. Now they would be expanded well beyond any previous system. Built 50 meters inland, 20 kilometers east and west of Hakata Bay, an approximately 3-meter high and 3.5-meter wide wall was quickly raised. It was a simple but effective concept, a defensive structure for the Japanese to hide behind and fight from, which would obstruct any movements of landing parties which may seek to flank the defenders of Hakata Bay. Landing assaults by sea were hard in the best of times, and this would not be the best of times. For the wall's construction, whoever's land the wall had to pass through was responsible for the cost and construction of that section. While it was another cost-saving measure for the bakufu, it angered many and hampered construction. It was supposed to be complete before the end of 1276, but construction continued through 1277. At the end of 1275, Hojo Tokumune and his advisors even discussed taking the fight to the enemy and launching some sort of invasion of Korea. While it never materialized, orders were made to prepare some ships and Gokenin. Undertaking such a task, though, was eventually recognized to be beyond their abilities, while at the same time planning the defense of Kyushu, even though already the bakufu was dealing with reports of conflict between officials and Gokenin with the increasing demands being levied on them, all the while forbidding samurai to leave Kyushu. The ships and men raised for the scrapped invasion of Korea were instead sent to defenders at Hakata Bay. When the larger Yuan fleets of the second invasion set out in summer 1281, Hojo Tokumune's preparations showed their success. He benefited from struggles on the part of the Yuan, with one of their fleets delayed in its launch. The seawall worked exceptionally. Instead of landing and beginning their assault, the Yuan fleet skirmished along the shore, trying to seek some unguarded section. With the Yuan staying offshore, the Japanese took their own ships to bring the fight to them. In the night, The samurai rowed up beside the Yuan warships, scaling them and battling on the decks. A few islands off Kyushu's coast were taken, but by the time a storm surge at the end of August 1281 scattered the Yuan ships, their will to fight had been sapped and they'd been unable to force their landing. Thus, Tokumune's ploy worked well. Even after this victory, Tokumune did not let his guard down. A furious Kublai continued to send envoys with demands for submission, and made plans for a third invasion. Tokumune continued to maintain garrisons and patrols on Kyushu, with the Gokenin who lived there forbidden from leaving the island without permission of the bakufu. Kyushu Island itself came under greater control of the Hojo clan, with more Hojo Shugo appointed there to keep a close eye on this strategically vital area. The sea wall continued to be maintained, stores of weapons and other war materials were gathered, and any official or landowner who complained was swiftly replaced by someone more pliable. Another plan for a Japanese invasion of Korea was even discussed, though once more went nowhere as the threat of a third Yuan attack remained too high. This third invasion never materialized, and Mongol interest in a third attack quickly dissipated with the death of Kublai Khan in 1294. But Hojo Tokumune never knew that relief. He died in 1284, only 32 years old. He was succeeded by his young son. With the boy too young to rule, power fell into the hands of another regent. Thus, from 1285 until 1293, Japan was ruled by the regent of the regent acting for the shogun, acting for the emperor, who was in turn sidelined in his own court even more by his father, the previous emperor, who had retired yet still ran things there. Without Tokumune's presence, the careful system he had balanced began to fall apart, as rival lords began conspiring against each other for power in the vacuum. Thousands of Gokenin who had impoverished themselves to fight for the bakufu never received rewards, for even after the second invasion, these had mostly been given to important bakufu and Hojo clan supporters and allies. In this way, the bakufu inadvertently created a class of very dissatisfied and very well-armed men. While the threat of a third potential Mongol invasion kept everyone playing nice for a few years, by the 1330s, the once mighty Kamakura bakufu had collapsed into civil war. More videos on Mongol and Japanese history are on the way. Make sure to subscribe and press the bell button to see them. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive videos. Join the ranks of patrons and YouTube members via the link in the description or by pressing the button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, join our private Discord, and much more. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing, it helps immensely. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.